G'day there guys, it's your main man Markee, back at it again with r/LegalAdvice. Now if you love this video like I love you, I want you to sit back, relax, chuck a like on the video, prawn on the Barbie, and enjoy the content. Posted by user Stinky Furniture. Titled, Brother's friend wanted a place to store a couple of wardrobes and a bed while he moved back in with his parents until the COVID crisis is over. My house is now packed full with urine stinky furniture. What can I legally do with it? Country, New South Wales, Australia. I get on okay with my brother, and his friend hadn't shown any hint of being an idiot over the last 15 years, so I went along with this. I'll call my brother's friend Doug. My brother phoned me a while back and asked me if I could do a favor for Doug, and he put Doug on. And Doug told me he's got to move back in with his parents because he lacks work like all of us and needs a place to store a couple of wardrobes full of clothes and a bed for about 6 months until things open up again. My brother told Doug I had a spare room with not much in it, which is true, and I was happy to help, so I said sure, bring it over. The spare room is more than big enough for a couple of wardrobes and a bed. Through miscommunications and a shift change at work, I couldn't be there when Doug moved out of his old place and put his stuff in the spare room. So I dropped my spare key to my brother and he supervised Doug. On Friday afternoon, I came back home to a house packed full of what looks like every possession Doug has ever owned, packed into every room of my house, and almost all of it is urine-stained and covered in mouse droppings. A couple of wardrobes full of clothes and a bed has turned into 2 wardrobes full of mouse droppings clothes and boxes, a dozen garbage bags of more clothes, 6 chairs and a kitchen table, a bedside table, a dozen boxes of books, 2 bookcases, boxes of kitchen implements, half a dozen wall hangings and paintings, a house door covered in stickers, a credenza, a single bed and a double bed, in which both of them reek of urine and bloke, 4 small chests of drawers, 3 kitchen cupboards, a pair of card tables, and 2 refrigerators with food in the freezers and plugged into the power, and more bags of bedclothes, electronics, just about everything to fill a regular small house. Everything in the house stinks, and I can't do this. I don't mean it just has a scent on it, it stinks badly. I can taste the stink in my mouth even when I'm out of the house. With the heater on now that it's winter, it's nauseating. I phoned Doug, and he told me he has to come and get this all out. And he can't. He's already 600 kilometers away on his parents' property and has no money left. I told him I'm going to dump the lot if he doesn't come get it, and he told me I'd made a binding verbal agreement with him, and if I damaged anything, he'd come down on me like a ton of bricks with legal action. 10 minutes after getting off the phone with him, his dad phoned and made more threats the same. With what money, guys? With what money? I can't reach any of the shelving in my spare room, I can't use half my couch or my art desk, I can only just reach my own clothing in my bedroom drawers, and I can only use one chair in my kitchen. I've contacted my brother, and he made a stupid shrugging noise and said that he thought that's what I agreed on. What am I legally allowed to do with all this? I agreed to a couple of wardrobes and a bed. I did not agree to a house full of stuff. I want to at least get the worst of it out of the house immediately, but it's been raining and we have a week more rain forecast. I can't afford to put it in storage. I'm slowly draining my savings the last few months as work has been cut back due to COVID. I don't have a garage or shed. I have no undercover place to put any of this. Best I could do was borrow a tarp and wrap up the worst wardrobes and cling wrap the bed, but that's only a minor help as it all smells bad. Oh my god, an MS Paint drawing, yes! I did a house plan drawing. Sorry it's rubbish. On the left is my normal house, TV is the lounge, S spare room, D desk room, B bedroom, and K kitchen. On the right is the same with all of Doug's stuff added in red. We've got quite the artist on our hands here. Edits. Okay, this has gone beyond legal advice and beyond a joke, I think. I just went around taking photos, and Doug has a dried up, used cat litter tray in the bottom of his wardrobe underneath clothing. The bags of clothing have mouse nests in them, and there are cockroaches. I've phoned friends, and we're dumping it on the front lawn tonight. It's 11:30 PM here. and I'm texting Doug's parents with the photos, and if they want any of it, they'll come get it. I'll deal with the consequences of that later. My sanity and sanitation is worth more. So some people in the comments recommend, before you do anything, make sure to take pictures. Thanks for that. Good suggestion. Doing it right now. Also, take a video walkthrough. Narrate. Have another person there to witness during the video. In your video, describe in detail exactly what you were seeing and smelling. I did this here in the US for a lawsuit. When the judge saw the video, we won damages. Good luck. Doug lied and broke the agreement first when he dumped far more than what he claimed he was leaving into your home. Therefore, you have no legal obligation to him, verbal or otherwise. They can make all the legal threats that they want. You never agreed to let him use your entire home as a storage unit, and the fact that this stuff makes your house unlivable should be enough for a judge to say you have done nothing wrong here. I'm an attorney, but in the US. There are several common concepts in contract law that are not met here. First, you must have a meeting of the minds, as in you must both agree to the same thing. Here, you obviously did not. Second, for a K to be valid, you have to receive something in return, called consideration. You are not. Third, you have no determination for how long this was supposed to last. You have to establish that for a K to be valid. Also, his junk has brought vermin and pests into your home. Hell no. If I were you, I would do as you planned, texting the photos, etc., and put in writing that you have no contract, that the personal property is infested, and if it is not picked up in X amount of time, giving the good faith effort of allowing them to retrieve the property, you will consider it abandoned property and dispose of it. Do not use the word return or returning it to him. That could imply you were willing to make the effort to return it to him. This is all on him to retrieve. Damn, dude, I feel bad for you. Please update us. Good luck. You can skip to the update if you want. This one's really interesting. It's a little bit long. First up, I'm in the UK and I am a lawyer. I would say this is a prime example of no good deed going unpunished. Assuming your jurisdiction is contract law like the UK, for a contract to be binding, both people get something out of it, and this doesn't sound like a legal contract to me as you were doing him a favor and no money changed hands. Second, it seems to me that what actually happened is unreasonable, in terms of amount of stuff and its conditions, and well outside of what was agreed initially. To such an extent, it is affecting your ability to live comfortably in your home. I think this could be deemed a legal nuisance, which you did not consent to. Do you have any free legal advice centers where you live, or say law students that do a uni clinic? If you deliberately chuck his stuff, you might be committing criminal damage, so you do need to be careful. So I would write to him and his dad to say, I agreed to X items in my spare room, I did not agree to Y, actual items and the unpleasant state of them. This means Z effects to me, i.e. smell, can't get to my own stuff, etc. Add photos for effect. I am no longer willing to store these items for free indefinitely, and therefore give notice that you must collect the items from me or arrange alternative storage within X reasonable number of days. If you do not, a daily charge of money will be made. Measure how much space it's taking up and compare it to a storage unit. Failure to collect or pay within X, 28, days will result in items being sold to offset the charges, and any unsold items will be disposed of. He might come to collect or move them, but if he doesn't, you can then get rid of it. Never do anyone a favor like this again without being there to supervise. And OP gives us a reply, saying, I just looked up about contracts here being valid, and consideration counts. I get nothing out of this. I'll take that tentatively, meaning I'm not bound by any verbal contract. I imagine that doesn't mean I'm protected if I put his stuff out in the rain, and it is destroyed all the same. Just that I don't have to keep it here. That's one step ahead. Updates. Brother's friend wanted a place to store a couple of wardrobes and a bed while he moved back with his parents until the COVID crisis is over. My house was packed with stinky furniture and it's all okay now. New South Wales, Australia. It's all solved. On Monday morning, I sent photos of everything disgusting I could, and of Doug's furniture on the lawn to Doug and his dad, telling them it's beyond foul and I wouldn't be keeping any of it inside my house, and I'll dump it this week if I don't come get it. 20 minutes later, I got a call from Doug's mother. She asked if it was so bad, could I send her some evidence, like photos. I told her I'd already sent them to her son and his dad. She yelled out in the background to one of them, she says she did send photos. Then she gets off the phone. Half an hour later, she called me back and said they'd be down to pick up Doug's stuff, and apologized. She asked if his books were okay. Apart from the mouse gnawings and droppings, yeah, I'm not a barbarian. They were outside under the eaves. This morning, they turned up from 600 kilometers away. Doug and his dad wanted to begin packing in their Pandec, but Doug's mum wasn't having any of that. They dumped 90% of it at the tip and came back and just took a few things home. Even the food in the freezer was off. His mum apologized and offered to make me good with cash, but she's already solved enough and I declined. She left it open-ended and said if I needed anything fixed, to call her. I know I didn't follow legal advice, but this was the equivalent of someone asking you to hold onto a small keychain-sized box for half a year, but instead, they sneakily cover you in 50 kilos of feces you're not allowed to wash off until you get a lawyer and fill out all the right paperwork and wait a month. I just couldn't do it. I got lucky. I've had words with my brother and changed the locks to my place too. He'd opened up and let Doug and Doug's mates in, then they left the key behind with him. He didn't know how bad it was either. My brother is an idiot, and Doug is a 32-year-old baby, and hopefully I'm a little wiser. That was one disgusting story, but I'm glad that it ended amicably. Posted by user Darth Rubber Duck. Titled, Someone claiming to be my wife scheduled a vasectomy for me. I'm single, and I've not been to that hospital in 4 years. Healthcare law including HIPAA. So the hospital in question, I had not been to it in roughly 4 years. I had gone to the ER after an accident at training with the National Guard in another part of the state. Today, I received an automated text from the urology center about an appointment tomorrow afternoon. I called them, and they told me a woman claiming to be my wife had scheduled it with my name, date of birth, and cell phone number. I told them that I'm not married and have no interest in vasectomy ever. They cancelled the appointment. The last doctor I saw was at a local urgent care that's not in the same healthcare system as that clinic. They're two separate entities. Do I need to file a HIPAA complaint? Nobody outside of the healthcare organization, my chain of command, and battalion would have known of this ER visit back then. What should I do? Honestly, I would guess there was a mix-up, and an employee put the appointment on the wrong patient record. It is the simplest explanation, and nothing else really makes sense. If someone was trying to get a vasectomy on your dime, they would have used their own cell number for follow-up. That's a good point, but others have suggested the possibility of identity theft, and I would say it's worth OP following up just to be safe. You can contact the hospital's privacy office and file a complaint. If someone called in and provided your info though, then the hospital did nothing wrong. Can the hospital take action against the individual on my behalf if I request it? They can take action for a HIPAA violation if the hospital or one of its employees, or former employees, is at fault. They can't if that person found out some other way. If the latter is true, do I have other options like some sort of fraud law? No, because you have no damages. Keep a record of this though, in case it is stalking behavior. You will have to establish a repeated pattern of harassment to get a restraining order, and making weird medical appointments for you definitely falls under that heading. They can prevent them from using their hospital, emergency services excluded. The odds of them doing so is practically nil. They will probably investigate that there were no internal breaches and move on. More likely option though, do you have any friends that would pull a prank on you? Outside of people I know in the Guard? No. That's a yes then. Update. I contacted the hospital's privacy office and told them what happened. The lady on the other end said that when I went there in 2016, they misspelled my last name to one that's much more common. I get that a lot actually, and she suspects the clerk handling appointments got mixed up. That said, she said she would contact the clinic, have them contact the lady who called them for the appointments, and verify that this was just a clerical error and not fraud. Posted by user Azula Always Lies. Titled, "My dad is trying to take my car." So, my grandfather recently passed away. His name along with mine is on the title of my Kia. Nothing in the will specifies that the car reverts to me or to anyone, seeing as the will hasn't been updated since 2014. My grandfather outright paid for my car in full from the dealership and took out a loan that I was to be paying him back for since I could not get a loan myself due to the lack of credit. The car was bought in 2015. The loan was paid off by my grandfather due to the situation. He took the car away from me in 2016 because I got a red light ticket that turned into a warrant before I had the money to take care of it. The will is in probate. He and my uncle split everything, including the vehicles. My father cannot be the executor of the will because of a past felony, so it reverts to my uncle who lives in Hawaii and we're in Texas. I have not contacted my uncle about any of this just yet. I wanted a bit of real advice, seeing as I'm broke and have no options. My father wants to buy my uncle out of his half of my car, and have me pay him the $10,000, under certain conditions. I have always intended to pay that back to my grandfather. We even had a discussion about what happens when he died, and I would owe the estate. My dad wants the car fully in his name until I have paid him back in full. I have a problem with this. The exact reason he wants my name off the title is so that he has full control of the car, meaning if I'm not doing what he thinks I should be doing, he takes it away. The exact reason I want my name to stay on the title. Peace of mind, security. The car is completely paid off and has no ties to a contract, loan, or dealership. My grandparents loved me dearly, even when they didn't exactly like me or the life I lead, and this is the only thing any of my family has been able to do for me. I don't want to fight my dad on this, but it's looking like my only option. I need that car to get a job so I can start school, so I can start my life. Small backstory. I have been diagnosed with CPTSD from prolonged abuse as a child. 13-year-old neighbor kid, I was 7, on top of having my family fall apart at 16 when my father was arrested for trafficking wool across the internet. I was not a victim of this, along with constant emotional abuse from my mother and verbal and physical violence from my brother. At one point in my life, I was actually so terrified to be alone with my brother, autism, Asperger's, bipolar disorder, borderline mentally invalid, that I made up outlandish stories to get CPS involved because my parents either didn't care or didn't believe me. My parents treated my advantage, the situation, and everything that happened afterwards as a burden. Having CPSTD means nothing to them. 10 years of in and out psychiatric institutions, they still give no crap about how they affected as a child or throughout my life, and as a result, I'm only mentally functional for maybe a good 8 hours and have to have heavy sedation to be able to sleep at night like a normal person, and that knocks me out for 12 to 14 hours. I can't just go out and get a job like someone mentally stable in my situation. I can barely ride a bike to my friend's house and back less than 2 miles from my home without feeling like I am physically dying. This car is literally the last thing in my life that I'm holding on to. It's the only hope I have, and my dad's trying to sabotage that. Please, any advice you could throw my way would be greatly appreciated. Tell your dad to freak off. He's trying to control you and you're an adult now. Sort this out with your uncle. Don't speak to your father about this at all. You could possibly receive the car as your inheritance, and should ask your uncle about that. How old are you? 26. Does the title say you and your grandfather, or you or your grandfather? What kind of agreement did you have to repay your grandfather? Where is the car now? Yes, both names are on the title. The agreement was to pay him a certain amount each month for the loan payments that he was making and my insurance through his policy. I got behind, we had worked it out verbally, and I was catching up. I honestly cannot at this point remember if anything was put in writing other than rules like no smoking, no using a cell phone, etc. The car is currently sitting in my father's driveway, my grandfather's residence before passing. You missed the point of the question. The title will either say and, or it will say or between the two names. The difference is important. If it says and, then it belongs in part to your grandfather's estate. If it says or, then it belongs to you now that he has passed, although the financial interest in it may still have to be dealt with. I see. Thank you for pointing that out, as I did not know there was a difference. I don't have my hands on the title, but I'm working on getting a copy from the dealership. Update on Dad trying to take my car from 2017. So, after all has been said and done, I have my car back. Last year I got so tired of dealing with him that I gave the car back to him and told him to never speak to me again. Between my last post and now, I got into a wreck, and my father told me it might be a good idea. Oh, okay, not gonna say that. My mental health obviously spiraled, and what he said wrecked me for another 2.5 years. I had planned on taking him to court over the car and emotional damages, but that is entirely unnecessary now. My father passed on in April from COVID. His wife decided to sell it to my mother for $1 so that she wasn't technically breaking her promise to him. My mother has turned around and sold it to me for $1, and as soon as the death certificate is in, we will switch the title to my name. I have my car, and I don't owe that monster $10,000 anymore. Thank you for the advice that was given on my previous post. It was a huge help while the car was always in his name. Man, I'm really great that it got solved like this, but that was an emotional roller coaster, my word. I'm really happy for OP, but I'm really sad along the way. And my condolences, OP. I really hope that everything's getting better for you. Posted by user Barbara Duke, titled Manitoba, Canada. My cousin lives in a basement suite. His landlord has recently enacted a new rule in their home that states lights out by 10 p.m., which is enforced via circuit breakers to save on power and lowers landlord's power bills, except my cousin is paying for his own power. As the title states, my cousin is currently renting a basement suite in the house of an older gentleman who owns the property. Legally, the renting situation is done by the book and follows the law to a T. However, 3 weeks ago, my cousin received a notice stating that there will be a new addition to the rule that says, lights out by 10 p.m. My cousin isn't overly bothered by this, as he's usually in bed by 9 p.m. anyways, and he can understand his elderly landlord wanting peace and quiet at night. Unfortunately, he realized immediately, when it first came into effect, that this is enforced by the landlord by physically turning off the power to the whole house by use of the circuit breakers, aside from the breakers for the refrigerators and freezers. This leads to a few problems. 1. My cousin is unable to see where he is going when using the bathroom or getting water at night without the use of a flashlight or phone. Candles are forbidden in the basement suite. 2. My cousin is unable to charge his phone overnight, which is a major issue as he needs it for an alarm and worries about it dying, leading him to potentially sleep in. He can't even run an extension cord from the same socket as the fridge and freezer because he might blow the breaker. And the new rule specifically states that extension cords are not permitted if they are going to be used to circumvent the rule. 3. The landlord rarely turns on the power at the designated time of 8 a.m., due to him either sleeping in, going to church, or just straight up forgetting. This leads to craps, showers, and shaves in the dark, no bathroom window, and is generally an inconvenience. My cousin pays for his own power, and therefore he should be allowed to use his power as he sees fit. Instead, he has to live with this situation because his landlord wants cheaper bills. We both understand that this is a silly first world problem, but he's tired of feeling like he's living the Amish lifestyle and wants to know if there's any legal recourse he could take to find common ground with his landlord. He isn't looking to sue the poor man. He just wants to use his own power and is willing to make compromises so both of them are happy. If he could just have the breaker for the bathroom lights and the one for his nightstand/phone charger, he would be a happy camper. However, his landlord refuses to budge. Does anyone have any ideas on how to approach this? What kind of lawyer will he need in this situation? Thank you so much for taking the time to read this and offering advice. It is greatly appreciated. Take care. What the landlord is doing is illegal. The landlord cannot interfere with essential services by this gov.mb California rule. I don't believe he can legally insist on lights out by 10 p.m. either. Your cousin should report this as soon as possible to this website. Your cousin should phone the local police or RCMP if you don't have local police. They should be able to get the power back on immediately for him. No lawyer should be needed at all in this situation. Thank you so much for the advice. I'll get these links to him and let him know what steps he can take to fix this. He honestly doesn't want to get the man in trouble because he's apparently a very kind man who was simply lonely after losing his wife to cancer last year and started renting out the basement to help pay the bills and to also have company as he has no family left in the province. They get along pretty well and they frequently have beers together outside by the fire pit. And this whole power thing is the first hiccup in a decent enough living situation. If anything, he just wants to warn the landlord about which laws he's breaking, so he doesn't get in trouble, as the man has had enough crap go wrong in his life. My cousin is going to try and get him to see reason, and if that doesn't work, he will unfortunately have to report him and let the law fix the problem. This is why you never rent from family or friends. You let things go on for longer than necessary until it inevitably turns into resentment. Anyways, thank you once again for your help. No matter what, he needs to understand that he gets money and in return, he rents out a part of his house. That means he'll have to have something very specific that does not include having power over his tenant's life. If he wants to have the lights out by any time whatsoever, he'll need to stop renting. If you sell an apple, but only under the condition that you pissed on it first, and the buyer still has to pay full price, something wouldn't be right either. Whoa. Is it not the duty of a good lawyer to help a client avoid such escalation when possible? I mean, I don't know that you're a lawyer. I know I'm not, though I've worked for several, and OP definitely isn't your client, but I think the principle is still valid here. OP's friend should first try talking to the landlord peacefully and politely, fully acknowledging the landlord's concerns in the matter, while advising him first of how it personally inconveniences the tenants and how it may also threaten the tenant's safety, well-being, and job, and therefore ability to pay rent, while also advising him that these measures and methods violate prevailing law. That if something should happen to the tenant as a result, a court would probably fine summarily for the tenants and against the landlord for that reason, and if it was something like stumbling in the dark and smashing something expensive, it could be costly to the landlord. The landlord doesn't seem like a jerk to me, just kind of a hard-nosed doofus who probably just doesn't know better. At least he should get the benefit of the doubt before resorting to calling in the cavalry. It should be a last resort to rely on enforcement to solve problems. Whenever possible, negotiation should be tried first. I've gotten good results myself from just talking to people. I will show them the prevailing law as a backup to my argument, but I've very rarely had to actually use it, or even threaten to. This is a silly first world problem. A first world problem would be his phone dying while trying to do Snapchat. Being denied access to an essential service like power, water, healthcare, etc. is literally a third world problem. People have mentioned potential illness on the landlord's part, but I would ask your cousin to look into the landlord's power bill. Cutting your total electricity in half is a big step to save money. Is this man having financial trouble? Is the power company gouging them due to some kind of change? Might be an avenue to look at. Elder abuse can often be financial, and if his landlord is now scraping by, your cousin may be able to report it on his behalf. If it's just your cousin and the old man living in this house, this is either a hostile act against your brother, or maybe an early sign of dementia. A call to whatever is your local adult protective services would not be a mistake. Having exclusive possession is a requirement of any valid tenancy, meaning it grants the person renting and leasing freedom from any sorts of intrusion, like the landlord randomly entering the premises to clean things up, as well as from any onerous terms, such as the one your cousin is facing, particularly if it was not agreed upon on contract. See parole evidence rule. There are definitely grounds for suit here. I would speak to a lawyer if this doesn't work out harmoniously, but I hope it does. Update: my cousin's landlord enacted a new rule that states lights out by 10 p.m, and is enforced by the landlord using the breakers to shut off all power, despite my cousin paying for his own electricity. So, my cousin and I want to thank all of you for the incredible amount of advice and support that you have offered him. He couldn't believe how many people cared and was touched by the very kind messages we've received by you fine folks. Thank you so much. This situation was resolved rather quickly, so thankfully it's all over. Now for the update. My cousin is moving out this weekend. He spoke to the landlord several times, citing several laws he was breaking and how my cousin pays for his own power, and therefore he shouldn't have his electricity shut off just because the landlord wants to save a few dollars. Also, one of you messaged me to let me know that breakers aren't meant to be turned on and off frequently, and that he's going to burn out all of his fuses if he continues. The landlord refused to listen and told him he shouldn't believe everything he reads on the internet. My cousin went ahead and printed out many comments from you folks, as well as copies of the laws he was breaking, and he told him that if he doesn't stop, he would get authorities and lawyers involved. Needless to say, the landlord did not like that one bit. After an argument, the landlord stated that my cousin should move out as he didn't trust him anymore? And my cousin was genuinely sad as he liked this man and had considered him a friend before all of this. The landlord said that he will not change his mind no matter how hard my cousin fights it, and that it's best that he just moves out. Anyways, the landlord told him that if he moves out, he will just void the lease and return the rent he has paid up for June, July, and August, as well as the security deposits, all under the condition that he moves out by the end of the month and doesn't get lawyers or anybody else involved. My cousin decided to cut his losses and move on. Luckily, my cousin is a minimalist and has very little to pack and move. He's going to be moving in with his girlfriend, which he is very happy about, and he will not be pursuing anything against the landlord as he got all of his money back, about $3,000, and he doesn't have to deal with James ever again. While my cousin didn't get the outcome he wanted, he still got a pretty good deal. He was planning on living with his girlfriend sometime in the future, so this event just sped things along. My cousin and I honestly feel bad for him, as the man has gone through a lot and has had a pretty rough life. Still, this doesn't excuse his behavior and nonsensical rules. And that's it. Thank you all again for your help and support. It was honestly overwhelming. Take care, you beautiful people. Edit. Since I'm getting nasty messages, I figured I should edit this to let everyone know that I have finally convinced my cousin to report him. He will be reporting the moment he has moved out, which is Saturday. We are also looking to get him help for his declining mental health. Also, my cousin already received every dime owed to him in cash, and received a revised contract stating that the lease was voided as of June 1st, and that no further payments will be required. There you go, folks. Stop insulting my cousin and I. Got fired for discussing salary at work. Is there anything I can do? I know it's a right of the employee to discuss this, but I live in North Carolina, which is an at-will state, so I don't know if I have any rights here. Are you a manager? If not, this directly violates the NLRA, and you can file a complaint with the NLRB. I filed a complaint. Thank you. What's the stipulation about being a manager? Not the same protection? The NLRB only protects workers who are eligible to join a union. Management cannot be in unions. Ah, okay, thank you. And Gallendon says, it'll depend on whether or not you're in a management or supervisory role. If not, it is illegal for them to fire you for discussing your salary. At-will not enter into it, because regardless of at-will employment, there are still things that an employer is not allowed to fire you for. You cannot, for example, be fired for being a member of a protected class, or in retaliation for doing a small number of protected activities. Discussing salary is one of those protected activities for non-management supervisory roles. Can you substantiate that this was the reason that you were fired? Can you get them to admit in writing that this was the reason that they fired you? Contact the NLRB and file a report for wrongful termination. Edit to add, I did not mean to suggest that you shouldn't contact the NLRB if you don't have an admission in writing, only that it would be pertinent information to include when you file the complaint, and to suggest that it might make it easier to get resolved. They fired me over the phone and in person. The termination letter mentioned something about unprofessionalism in the workplace instead. The only reason they gave was salary, and there's nothing else I did. There is no paper trail, and I didn't know how to manage to create one. You can still write down what they said, the dates they said it, and file a complaint. I would. Man, there's a lawyer somewhere and they are drooling and they have no idea why. I didn't get fired, but I almost got fired for the same reason. Looks like you've done the right thing and contacted the NLRB. Good. The only advice I have to offer is don't feel bad and don't let up if crap gets heavy or your employer tried to convince you to not go through with it. Update: fired from my job for salary discussion in NC. I posted back in February that I was fired from my job for discussing wages. This subreddit told me to file a charge with NLRB. They found merit in my case, and I just got a settlement. Please, 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 even if you live in an at-will state, do the tough work of charging the company. You deserve to advocate for yourself. Posted by user 42K12, titled, "My roommate accuses me of stealing from her and says she will call the police if I don't let her search my room and go through my closets, boxes, and suitcases. Location, Washington, D.C. So, I'm an international student currently living in D.C. I had planned to return home right after my graduation in May, but got stuck in the US due to the coronavirus lockdown. But I hope to leave as soon as possible, by July or August at the latest. My university campus shut down in March, and because I couldn't go home, I moved into a short-term sublet until I can return home. Basically, I'm living out of boxes and suitcases and have no desire of unpacking or settling down at this house. I just want to go home as soon as I can. Relatable. Enter my housemate. Last week, she told me that she was missing several items of clothing and some jewelry and thought I had taken them. She asked to search my room alone, open my boxes, suitcases, etc. I refused because A, she isn't my landlord, B, I felt that I had a reasonable expectation of privacy, and C, she couldn't even give me an exact inventory of the things I supposedly stole. Things were fine, if awkward, until yesterday, when she entered my room without my permission while I wasn't there and tried to search through my things. I caught her and told her in no uncertain terms to stay out. Now she says she will call the police if I don't consent to a search of everything I have so she can ensure I haven't stolen from her. I am totally at my wit's end. There's no way to lock my room door, but I'm resorting to transferring my valuables into my suitcases and putting mini locks on them. I am looking for flights out of here now because this is really not a problem I needed. What should I do? Should I let her search through my things? Does she have any standing to call the police? If she does, should I let them search through my things? What if she claims something of mine as hers? Any advice is more than appreciated. She can call. In the unlikely event they show up and want to search your things, you can refuse consent for them to do so unless they have a warrant, which isn't going to happen. And if you don't already, you should have a lock on your door. I worry that this is the kind of person that would go into your room when you aren't there and go through your things. You can buy and install a handle with a lock and then switch it back when you move out. Thank you. Your comment really reassured me. I'm trying to resolve it just on my own. Not a lawyer, but I would suggest that you get a lock and a camera for your room in case she ever tries to plant something in your room or tries to claim something of yours or gets into your room without your permission. I would also suggest documenting everything she says she's missing, as well as documenting all your valuables in case she doesn't steal them or declare them to be hers. Thank you. I'm looking into that option. I didn't want to get a camera or anything because, as I mentioned, I'm living here for the very short term and haven't even unpacked. She has no legal right to search your things. The cops have no legal right to search your things without a search warrant, which may not be a priority for them considering all the other activity in DC at the moment. Keeping your suitcases and anything else you can locked is a good idea. If your room has a standard style door handle, you can get a lockable handle that you could install easily with a screwdriver and then just swap that back when you leave. It's a non-permanent modification, so you shouldn't violate the lease by doing it. Look up lockable interior door handle on Amazon, or if you have access to transport, you could go to Home Depot and pick one up. There's one up by the Rhode Island Avenue Metro in NE, and there's also one close by in Virginia. Otherwise, go screw yourself is a complete sentence, and one I would probably using a lot when said roommate accused me of crap. Thank you. The lockable handle is a great suggestion. I just purchased one. There is no apparent reason to believe what she's saying, and unless she can articulate to police what is missing, they would have no apparent reason to believe what she's saying. I don't think this person is interested in finding anything you've stolen. It sounds more like she wants to steal things. Get a good lock and a camera, per other comments. Update: my roommate accuses me of stealing. So, things have taken the wildest turn since I posted this. Those of you who suggested that she was actually planning to steal from me were completely right. A day after I posted this, as I was waiting on a camera to arrive, I found her in my room again. I was out getting groceries and came back earlier than expected, and she had laid out a lot of my boxes on my bed. Some of my shoes were laid out on the bed, and she was rooting through everything. I asked her what she was doing, and she said all this was proof I had stolen stuff from her. I told her to get out, and at this point saw no option but to call the non-emergency police line, as well as my landlord and property manager. A very kind police officer came by a bit later. My roommate couldn't produce evidence of ownership of the things she was claiming, while I had most of the receipts still intact. He gave her a warning to stop, but couldn't do much further since she hadn't yet stolen anything, technically speaking. I went to my room to lock up everything even marginally valuable into suitcases that night, and that's when I started to realize I was missing a few things after all. These are things that I had never even unpacked since moving in here, so it didn't even occur to me before to check through those. I made the decision to ask my roommate's permission to look through her room with her present, just for my peace of mind. I felt bad for violating her privacy, but I told her I was going to call the police again so they could search her room or she could return what she had taken. She said she didn't take anything from me and how dare I accuse her, etc. But she allowed me to look through her room. When I walked into her room, I immediately knew she had been stealing from me because, bizarrely, her room was decorated with shopping bags and empty boxes I knew were taken from my room. I think she took the bags because they were from high-end brands, and she had put her own stuff in some of them and put them on display on her table, vanity, etc. She had even put her old shoes in random shoe boxes taken from my room, which was so strange. I then asked to look in her closet, where, wedged behind all her clothes and things, I found a cardboard panel underneath, which was a bunch of my stuff, including clothing and a jewelry box that I own. I peeked under her bed and also found 3 of my purses there. At this point, she was getting hysterical, so I snapped quick pictures of the stuff I found, left the house, and called the police and waited for them outside. They took my statement, asked me to send receipts of all my things, and asked her to give a statement as well. 2 days later, they gave me back all my recovered belongings. The police officer also informed me that she was selling several of my belongings on Poshmark. She had also swiped a timepiece I inherited from my grandfather, though thankfully, I don't think she ever realized its true value while she had it. It's been a horrible few days. I feel so stupid for not being more careful. I've always had wonderful roommates, so it was completely naive of me to blindly trust her too. She claims to be living with a friend for now. I was absolutely livid after everything, but also tired of the whole saga. I broke my lease 2 days ago and booked a flight home for the next week, even though I know it's dangerous. I thought that was mostly the end of it, so I started focusing on getting ready to go home. But then, I got a call yesterday evening from a doctor's office asking to speak with me. This woman turned out to be my housemate's psychiatrist, who requested I listen in on their session briefly to hear more about what happened and why. I honestly was very reluctant, but also curious, so I said I would give them 10 minutes of my time if she truly felt it would be beneficial for me to hear it. I'm writing this update now, having sat through those 10 minutes this morning. My housemate basically said I deserved to know what had gone down these past few weeks. Said she has grown up with a lot of emotional and financial deprivation, and owning some of my stuff made her feel more confident. She said it helped her overcome her imposter syndrome and felt like we were on an equal footing over the past few weeks. I frankly felt a lot of anger and felt like she wasn't taking responsibility for her actions. A lot of what she also said sounded very coached and rehearsed, and definitely didn't explain why she was selling my things online. I told her that I hope she gets better, but that I do not forgive her, and told her never to contact me again unless absolutely necessary for the end of our tenancy. Anyway, that's the end of the saga as far as I can tell. I don't know what the police might do with all this info. Probably nothing, I'm assuming. But I'm just ready to put an end to this surreal state of affairs and go home now. Edit. Thanks to everyone for giving me advice on my original post and sharing with me the best of legal advice discussion on this update, to which I was able to add some of my perspective. Some people commented and messaged that they don't care about my sob story due to mummy and daddy's money, and that I should not exaggerate. I am editing my post here to take out the specific details of what was stolen, so people don't feel that I was only interested in flaunting material possessions. Actually, too much info, but my parents came from nothing, so I'm not sorry for our family's money or for the great life they have given us. My father came from a small village in a third world country where he studied hard to achieve what he did. He was the breadwinner of his family since the age of 15. In his university years, he was homeless. My mother has a similar background. I make no apologies for their success and the life they have given us access to. Posted by user Toby Bakun, titled, "Found my car on a listing website soon after the insurance company told me it was being repaired. What can I do?" So I found my Ford Fusion, which was wrecked on a listing website, soon after the insurance company told me the repair costs would be $5,600, just under totaling it via repair costs, and I would be able to get it repaired, which would take 5 days. Well, I looked on the IAA Lots website that they sent it to, and they have it for sale. They have cleared out my personal belongings and cleaned the car. The VIN matches and the key fob still has the keyring on it with my first name in bright blue. What can I do if the lot has thrown away my personal belongings? Location, Tennessee. Report this to your adjuster first. They may not know what's going on. I've run into that in the past. If your stuff is gone, you'll have to file a claim with the insurance carrier of whoever got rid of your stuff, which is likely the lot or shop. If that claim is denied, you'd move to small claims courts. Insurance adjuster here. Most auto insurance companies cover up to X dollars of stolen or damaged contents when part of a claim utilizing collision or comprehensive. It is unlikely OP's stolen possessions are covered under auto, and if they were, they would almost certainly be subject to a deductible. This would count under contents coverage for property insurance, but we run into the same deductible problem, and a property claim almost always affects rates. It's probably not worth it for OP to file a claim. I would definitely recommend a desk report with the police for a record, and maybe small claims depending on the dollar figure and amount of effort OP wants to put in. Wouldn't they be able to file small claims against the lot if it wasn't the insurance company that approved the sale, and likely then planned to total it out for OP, since the lot was supposed to be repairing it, actually removed the belongings without authorization from the owner? They should be held responsible if the assurance didn't approve the sale and total out the car. Yeah, this would definitely not be the same as if someone were to break into your car. The business absolutely would be liable for anything removed from the car if they're trying to illegally sell and scrap it. Even if they decided to total it after the insurance company initially planned on having it repaired, they have to let the owner retrieve their belongings, and they need a signed title before they can do anything with it. Significant Garage 9 says, "I would definitely screenshot everything. Call the insurance company ASAP and ask them what's going on. Don't wait for them to call you back. Immediately go to wherever your car is and get your personal belongings. If your stuff is gone, call the police. Make sure there is a report filed. Record everything. If not video, at least audio. If the insurance company is paying to repair your car, it definitely can't be sold." Auto Claims Manager here. We need more info. Is this a tow yard, salvage yard your vehicle was towed to after the accident? Was it towed to an impound or tow yard after the accident and then to this facility, like IAA or Copart? Is this the body shop that you took your car to? Is this a body shop they recommended? Is it possible the preliminary estimate was only $5,600, and once they did the tear down, it increased the repair cost over the total loss threshold, and now it has been moved to a salvage yard like Copart or IAA? Is the listing you're seeing online or on one of these websites? If the scenario I just laid it fits, this is common and not out of the ordinary. If your items were in your car when it arrived at Copart or IAA, they can allow you to pick them up, or in some cases, mail them to you. Unfortunately, if your car was moved to a tow yard and impound right after the accident and then moved to Copart or IAA, I would not be surprised at all if your stuff is gone now. Tow and impound yards are shady. Honestly, your best bet is to call your insurance company first. They will likely ask you the questions above, have an explanation, or B, they will look into it. Most likely your personal belongings will not be covered unless you have an endorsement for personal items. Most policies do not include this. Hopefully your stuff is in a box at Copart or a similar business. The car was totaled without being notified until today, 6/22/20. Thank you for the wonderful advice. Still no word on the personal belongings though. The car was taken to IAA to be inspected, and their inspection added the damages up past what the car is worth. And the OP put in their update kind of what was said just then. The car was totaled without us being notified today on the 22nd of June 2020. Thank you for all your wonderful advice. Still no word on the personal belongings though. I hope at least some of the advice in this one helped if you guys ever find yourself in a similar situation. Posted by user Johnson, titled, "A $100 Garth Brooks ticket is turning into a $5,000 nightmare." Hello, any advice on what I should do? This is regarding tickets to the upcoming Garth Brooks drive-in concert. This is the email I sent Encore Live, which is the promoter. On Friday at 10 a.m. CST, I got in line for tickets for the McHenry, Illinois location through Ticketmaster. At 11 a.m., I went into the queue, and around 11:30 a.m., I was let in after selecting one ticket. I entered my credit card information and submitted it. After a few seconds, it said they couldn't process the payment. I tried again. After several attempts, with 2 different cards, my wife called and said our credit card company called her regarding a fraud warning. She approved and said to resubmit. We did this a few more times, knowing there were over 300,000 in line to get tickets from Garth's tweet, and if I restarted, I would never get the ticket. We eventually gave up. Note, on the Universe website, where Ticketmaster took us, under "Why did my payment fail?", it said, "Note, if your payment has failed, we recommend trying again, and if you still cannot book, try with a different card." That part was removed Saturday morning around 7 a.m, but I do have a screen cap of the original. About 20 minutes later, I received an email confirmation with an attached PDF ticket. They kept coming in, and by 1 p.m. CST, I had 16 tickets and was charged $1,600. Never once did it say the transaction went through. Now, to put this in perspective, I'm a dad of twin 3-year-olds who is just getting back to normal life. We cannot afford $1,600, period. I tried reaching out to Ticketmaster and Universe, but there were no numbers listed, and my only way to do this was via Twitter. I had no luck reaching anyone. Tried DMs and tweets with them. I was panicking, and I knew I needed to get rid of these tickets ASAP. I did not want to come home and explain to my wife why we owed $1,600. So I listed 14 tickets on StubHub at $200 each. Didn't know what the fees associated with StubHub were, and wanted to do the best I could to recoup the costs. By 5:15 p.m, I had sold all 14. After fees, it was just about $2,000, which has not been collected. I started seeing things on Twitter that there was an error, and that there would be a new sale on Saturday. Still no emails about the excess charges by anyone. At 9:15, I started receiving emails about my tickets being cancelled and void. Again, no other email, call, or anything prior. At 8 a.m. on Saturday, I got an apology email from Universe, and at 9 a.m. I received my 1 ticket. I've been on the phone with StubHub all day, and what they say is, I sold GA tickets and am responsible to provide those tickets to the buyers. Here's the big issue. Besides the lack of communication, I had 16 tickets and was charged $1,600 refund within the next 2 weeks. I could see the issue if I bought one and was awarded 16, but I was sent 16 tickets and was charged $1,600. Now, with the show being sold out, I have to look on StubHub to provide the other 14 buyers with tickets. Currently, that will be around $4,500 to $5,000. I plan to use that one ticket that I was sent back. In short, a $100 Garth Brooks ticket turned into a $5,000 nightmare. This stinks. I was a big Garth fan. Any advice? You'll get the farthest treating this as a customer service problem. Here is the executive contact information for Ticketmaster, and here is the executive contact information for StubHub. The frontline customer service folks are just going to read a script and/or transfer you to no one. You need to get this complaint in front of someone with access to the power to fix it. And I'm sure you guys can find this one if you look on the r/LegalAdvice subreddits, and if you just go to those ones and look for their executive numbers. Thank you for this. So frustrating when all I hear on the phone is, well, I talked to my lead, ... Thank you. I've seen similar issues pop up on the site that I linked. They have their own forums and can probably help in drafting exactly what to say. The best thing to do is remain polite and concise. I always recommend a chronological bullet list. Remember, the people reading these look at them all day. They're in the best position to help if their eyes aren't watering from reading a 4-page complaint letter. I just want to say thanks for this. Already received a reply from one of them that was very sincere. I've been through a lot this weekend, but his email gave me some hope. Thank you. Anytime you have a problem with a purchase you made with a credit card, you still need to call your credit card company and immediately dispute the transaction. In this situation, I'd explain there was a system error and I was charged multiple times for a single ticket. I should have paid $200, but was charged in total $1,600. I would also explain I was sent 16 tickets, but only wanted 2. Believe me when I say, companies are real quick about solving these types of problems when the credit card company claws back the funds for the purchase. The company will then need to make it right in order for them to get paid. Also, what Friday was this? If this was literally 3 days ago Friday, I wouldn't worry about it yet. The transactions might appear pending on the account, which is normal. What most likely will happen is the transactions will never post to the account, and if they do, simply file a claim through the card issuer. Completely common situation. Except that he did worry about it, which is why he proceeded to sell the excess tickets. Although Ticketmaster has acknowledged the mistake and cancelled the excess of the 16 tickets, he already sold them on StubHub, who are now telling him that the mistake doesn't matter, he has to provide the 14 tickets. Hence why he's asking for advice on what his legal options are. Why the heck would you buy them new tickets instead of just refunding them their order? That's what I said, but StubHub said I had to or I'll incur a big penalty. Thought about just cancelling my card associated with StubHub, cancel all the orders, then ride this out, but wife's not sure that's good either. Also, I tried calling StubHub Saturday morning to cancel so they could try and get tickets through Ticketmaster, but again, no. Per company policy, they will charge you the cost of the tickets plus a 40% fee using the credit card info you gave them. StubHub does not care about the seller. A less upstanding individual would probably cancel the card, claiming fraud, and get permanently banned from StubHub, but then they could take legal action if for some reason they had spare lawyers with nothing better to do. Never sell things you don't have. The bank calling you was a huge warning. But he did have them when he sold them, which I don't understand either. Why did they cancel them but have no communication? You know, that would give me a heart attack being in this situation. I would have a heart attack to the moon and back, especially with that many kids. This is the kind of situation you have like fever dreams about. This is like nightmares that wake you up with a shake. You're like, oh God, was it real? God damn it. Your heart's like pumping out of your chest and you're like, oh, StubHub's out to kill me. They've got my number. They're sending assassins my way. Update. Everything has been resolved. Both Ticketmaster and StubHub were very polite and helped find a resolution early this afternoon. Lesson learned: don't panic and throw tickets onto a third-party reseller without talking to credit card company and ticking company. Lesson 2 learned: don't take these customer service issues directly to the 800 phone centers. Wait for the work week and contact someone in management. To all my friends in low places, I am grateful for the support and suggestions. Thanks r/LegalAdvice. My landlord is requiring that I provide them with medical records proving that my wife and I tested negative for COVID-19, or we will be evicted in 30 days. Is this legal? USA MO. Unless this is in your lease, you could not be evicted for this reason. You can tell him no. If you're month to month, he can end your tenancy with proper notice for this reason though. And what would he do anyway if you were positive? People are going to get it. We have until December on our 1-year lease. We did tell them no, and they told us we will have to leave in 30 days if we do not produce our medical records. He's blowing smoke. He can't evict you for this. But if you actually get served with a court date, you should go, because who knows what lies he might come up with. Will do. If you haven't already gotten him to put that request in writing, I would do so. That way, if he tries to make up other reasons, you can show this is actually what it was about. Are you currently under a fixed-term lease, or are you month-to-month tenants? 1-year lease, we have until December 2020. Then no. Presumably you're legally entitled to live there, abiding by the written lease until December 2020. Does your lease say anything about the landlord's ability to terminate the lease early? What kind of rental setup is this? Do you live with the landlord, or do you have exclusive use of some unit? So in terms of lease early, yeah, but it's stuff like if we're convicted of a violent crime or drugs and that kind of thing, which we're not. Then it does not appear as if your landlord can introduce new terms into the lease, such as being evicted for failing to produce a negative COVID test. If you are evicted, show up in court on your court date and you can inform the judge that your lease does not specify that you can be evicted for failing to produce a negative COVID test. Soda K Dave says, I'll add to the great advice here with some steps you should take. First, get a copy of your lease and make multiple copies. Store some copies in an easily accessible location that is not your apartment. 1 copy in your vehicle, 1 at a relative's house, 1 in a safe deposit box, etc. You may need this in case the landlord performs an illegal self-help eviction. It'll show proof that you're on an active current lease. If this happens, call the police. You can also look for some local landlord-tenant organizations and see if they provide any legal assistance. Or spend some money to have an attorney write a letter to your landlord that the request does not comply with the terms of the lease and is not a cause of action to break the lease. It'll put your landlord on notice that you are well aware of your rights and are prepared to pursue those rights. Lastly, looking for places to move when your lease expires. Regardless of the legality in this instance, your landlord may very well decline to renew the lease when it does expire. And honestly, do you really want to continue living there after this? Just for this C says, not a lawyer, but do not under any circumstances share your medical records. He has no legal standing here and cannot require them of you. The advice here already given is solid. Please make copies of your lease and store them in multiple places. The ask is so strange. A. Are you not allowed to get sick ever? Do you need to report every time you get a cold? What does any illness have to do with where you live? B. That requirement is absurd. You could test negative and then get it the very next day. How far will this requirement go? How often will they require you to perform this invasion of privacy? It's absurd, and you should not adhere to the lunacy of that request. OP replies, they were doing quarterly inspections. We told them we were self-quarantined due to finding out my in-laws had a confirmed case, and we wanted to make sure that we didn't have it, so we self-quarantined and waited for test results. We tested negative, so we told the property manager, and now her bosses want copies of our medical records as proof. Did you refuse them access during their quarterly inspections? Does the landlord have any other argument to evict you? An argument that might be stronger than the COVID argument? Nope. We just told them they might want to wear a mask and gloves. Nothing else. Never been late or missed any payments. Then yeah, they can't ask that of you. You notified them that you had been exposed and that they may want to make precautions before entering. They cannot ask you for your medical records. Update. My landlord is requiring that I provide them with medical records proving that my wife and I tested negative for COVID-19, or we will be evicted in 30 days. Is this legal? So, my wife and I refused to provide our landlord with any medical records, and she backed down completely and acknowledged that asking for them was illegal. The gist of what she said was, oh, I didn't know I couldn't do that. Here is the text message response we got from her. Apparently there was a misunderstanding between her and I. I emailed her yesterday after I talked to you and told her what you said and asked her to call you. She told me that she did not say that. She said you were correct. It is illegal to give you a 30-day notice to vacate if you do not produce a written negative COVID-19 test result. My apologies. She said she was going to call you. I can give you the head corporate phone number if you would like to make a formal complaint to the company. It is blank. Okay, thank you. That is the number I gave her. Okay, well, I didn't get a phone call, but it's fine. We will be filing a complaint with corporate, but I doubt anything will come of it. We plan to leave here as soon as the lease is up. And I honestly don't blame them. Posted by 22 and Angry. Relatable. Titled, Cross-Post PPP Legal Advice. Boss says I owe 300 labor hours. Long story, my industry was toast during the stay-at-home order. I was fortunate to work for a company that got a PPP grant. I was able to work some during that time, but nowhere near the normal 40-hour work week. Because PPP, I was paid more than I typically would be on an hourly basis. My boss is now saying I owe 300 hours of labor for which I have already been paid for. Looking for a law professional to help me navigate this. I am hoping to officially resign from this company shortly, but on good terms. So, your employer, like many, have paid you wages during slow times to earn forgiveness for their PPP loan. What is their basis for you owing hours or wages, and what do they propose as a solution? I am hoping to officially resign from this company shortly, but on good terms. I would do the former, but don't expect the latter. This PPP thing is a mess. It shouldn't impact employees directly, and now that Congress has extended from 8 weeks to 24 weeks, there is no reason to fatten the calf, so to speak. You were paid. You owe nothing. If your boss claims they accidentally overpaid you, then they can take that money back. But it also messes up their forgiveness, and it sounds like it wasn't accidental. You do not owe anyone labor. Update. TN, now formal employer, says I owe either $6,000 or 300 hours of labor. I had my exit interview on Monday. It was very respectful and pleasant until the end, when the other person attending the interview leaves the room and the owner/my boss says, "So you have two options with where you stand on PPP with me. You can write me a check for $6,000 or work cleaning the office until you've worked 300 hours. I was a project manager, so this whole thing felt like a power move. I was stunned. I replied with, I am not able to answer that without at least speaking to my husband, and left. Turns out, she had had this same conversation with all the employees that have quit because they aren't getting paid and can't make rent or buy groceries. I have been in touch with the SBA, TN Department of Labor, and done initial interviews with attorneys. Edit, I do not plan on pursuing this unless she comes for me. If she does choose to pursue this, then I hope to have my legal obligations clearly represented by a professional. Posted by user Bubble Sorted, titled, Working Uncompensated Overtime While Making Less Than California Overtime Exemption Salary. I work as a software engineer for a tech company in California. I just learned that there's a minimum amount computer professionals need to be paid in order to be exempt from overtime requirements. I am salaried, and looking at the history of minimum salaries, have been paid at a rate of a bit lower, say a few $1,000s, than the required minimum. During busy times, I work overtime, 10 to 16-hour days, 5 days a week, without any extra compensation. However, I do have benefits like 401k matching and health insurance, and I did receive a bonus that puts me over the minimum for a year of work, though I received it a few months after the year was over. I haven't been able to find the details of what contributes to the minimum pay. Are things like bonuses and 401k matching included? I don't think the caveats on who qualifies as a computer software employee, C4.B, apply to me. I'm not a trainee or a computer repair person, for example. My company is very above board though, so it seems likely that I am misunderstanding the law. I would appreciate being pointed to any resources that can help me understand it better. How many employees does your employer have, and what is your minimum salary? There's a resource here by shrm.org, resources and tools, legal and compliance, state and local updates, yada yada yada, California. OP says, I would guess a few thousand employees. I'm not sure what you mean by my minimum salary. Thank you for the link, though it seems to be about general overtime exemption and not the computer professional exemption. Edit, according to this, my minimum salary to be exempt from overtime should be $90,790.07. Is that what you're asking? No, sorry, I meant what is your salary? I don't know why I wrote minimum. Ah, got it. My salary has been 5 to 10k below each year's minimum to be exempt. You can contact the district office for your location to make a complaint. And there's another link for it. There's been a lot of links in this episode. So what contributes to the minimum pay? Just base salary. For example, in 2018, your employer needs to pay you at least $43.58 per hour, $7,565 per month. If your base salary is less than that, you cannot currently be considered exempt on the basis of your work as a computer software employee. However, if you have management or administrative responsibilities, your employer might have grounds to classify you under one of those exemption categories instead. If you think you've been underpaid, your first order of business should be to write a clear summary of what you think the underpayment was and ask nicely to be paid the difference. Being polite often works. If that fails, you could submit a wage claim with the California Department of Labor. The general statute of limitations for wage claims in California is 3 years. You can ask for back pay farther back than that, and your employer might even pay you, but they aren't legally required to do so. Update: working uncompensated overtime while making less than California overtime exemption salary. After my original post, and thank you for the minor comment maker and Mishni, I contacted HR and asked for clarification on why we were making below the minimum for exempt software employees despite being classified exempt and working huge amounts of overtime. They pretty quickly acknowledged it was a mistake, and everyone on our team who was affected either got back pay and their current pay adjusted as if they'd started at the required salary, or was asked to recreate how much overtime they'd worked and were paid for it. I later heard other teams in the company made the same changes. It wasn't completely positive. Some contractors were laid off, presumably because of the increased cost of paying the employees. That's a yikes. Posted by user Adesha45, titled 24-Hour Fitness closed all Utah locations and transferred, sold, our membership information, billing information, etc. to another gym without consent. Isn't that illegal? So I'm wondering if and what can be done about the fact that when 24-Hour Fitness closed our gyms in Utah, they transferred our membership information, date of birth, address, email, phone, billing info, and card numbers to Vasa Fitness or Vasa Fitness. I received no communication beforehand that would have allowed me to prevent this from happening, just that it was. This doesn't seem right or legal. Floda McGee says, it's probably in your agreement that they can do this, which if that is the case, you already agreed to it. The only thing that seems like it allows them is there is a statement that says they can change the terms of the agreement at any time and will notify members by reasonable means. But isn't there some sort of consumer protection that prevents companies from selling information? I feel like that crosses a line. In terms of a gym sale, it is reasonable to provide certain information about their client list and client information to the company taking over the gym. But my billing information too? Yes, the new company is now responsible for billing you for the gym services. I guess, to be honest, I'm just frustrated over the lack of communication from either gym over this. We were told June 13th that all the 24-hour gyms were closing and our memberships were being transferred on the 17th of June. 4 days. And then we received no communication from Vasa or from 24 on how to opt out or what our options would be. Turns out, they're charging us our old fee from 24 hours, which is more expensive than what regular Vasa members pay. It's just frustrating all round. So mostly just annoyed and trying to understand how it's justified from a company perspective and legal perspective. I get that, and I'm sorry you're dealing with this. Unfortunately, in these times, I feel like many businesses may be bought or transfer ownership. And in order to have the most seamless transition, I believe many business sales are done quietly. It's crappy when you're a client that is left out of the loop. I would approach them kindly and ask if you can pay them the same amount Vasa members would pay, or see if there is any type of concession that can be made. The least they can say is no. I'm sure they don't want to lose their new clients either. 24 Hour Fitness declared bankruptcy earlier this year. This is likely their attempt to honor the terms of your membership agreement when they cannot provide the same club to you. They may be transferring his account to another gym so they can provide the same service without him going through the whole application process again. As long as he's not getting charged extra or having to extend his contract for the new gym, I don't really see a problem with this. Ooh. Edit/update. I think I mostly wrote this with some initial frustration with my membership being transferred and essentially being forced into a contract with a different company. When I initially spoke with Vasa about how I felt I was paying too much, paying $11 more for the same service as their original customers, they essentially told me, too bad. I've since spoken with some customer service who are getting me the lower price. Unfortunately, this is the only real gym option in my area. Also, I appreciate those who have pointed out that this is very common. I was unaware, and it was great to learn about it. Posted by user Rev Vegas, titled, "Friend has a pregnant crazy ex-girlfriend, and he wants to be part of his daughter's life. We're in Virginia, and I have a good friend who has a baby due in June. He desperately wants to be a part of his daughter's life, and is a kind-hearted, wonderful person. His problem is his ex-girlfriend. Once she became pregnant, it was like a crazy switch went on. From what I've heard, she has been emotionally abusing him throughout the whole of their relationship. He doesn't recognize it though, and he still has feelings for her. When she became pregnant, she started physically abusing him. He even showed me a picture of a bite mark from her. They were living together and he was paying all living expenses because she got herself fired from her job and never went looking for another one. Right now, she's living off student loans and money from her parents, although he occasionally drops off a bag of dog food for the dogs and just leaves it on the front porch. She doesn't ask for this, he just wants to help out, and that's the only thing he thinks she won't destroy if he leaves for her. On Christmas Eve, she kicked him out of the house. Huge fight, told him to leave, so he did. Went and spent Christmas with his family, stayed in contact with her, eventually came back. She liked having the bed to herself while she was gone, and said he could stay, but had to stay in the guest room, and basically just not interact with her. He obliged for a little while, but when he started trying to patch up their relationship, she blew up at him again, and kicked him out again. This time, he decided to stay gone. He still wanted to try and patch things up between them, and tried to take her on dates, and bring back the good in their relationship. She shut that down pretty fast after a couple of dates. The closer she gets to the due date, the more combative she becomes. She is currently threatening to get a restraining order if he or anyone in his family asks how she is doing and if she needs any help, financial or otherwise, even if they only contact her family and not her directly. She also claims he was verbally and physically abusive and has convinced her family that he was. By the way, all of these claims have been made since she kicked him out the last time. He doesn't have loads of money to go out and get the best lawyers and such. So he's trying to do a lot of this research on his own, so he does everything right and sets himself up well before he starts paying for a lawyer. He also knows he will need a paternity test, but is 99.99% sure the baby is his. At this point, he has no contact with his ex. She has blocked him, and is worried he won't even know when the baby is born. Here is my question. How much of a legal battle does he have ahead of him to gain some form of custody, and what can he do in the meantime to help his chances? Once the baby is born, he can get an order for a paternity test and then get court-ordered visitation. He's not going to get custody of a newborn right away unless the mother is completely unfit. She isn't unfit, she's just questionable. Apparently, there are some things on the house that are falling apart, and she won't call the landlord to fix them because she has 4 dogs, and she's only supposed to have 2. He might terminate the lease. Like, there's a hole on the floor in the kitchen and a few other little things. Is he on the lease? I don't think so. She was living there already, and he moved in with her. First step, he should get on the putative father registry to make sure he gets notified if she tries to put the kiddo up for adoption or anything like that. In regards to the legal battle, little if he does what's right. He should focus on the kiddo, not the ex. It can be emotionally hard for a father to not have the details leading up to the birth, but legally, she's not required to share them. He needs to respect her wishes and wait till the birth to file to establish paternity and seek his custodial rights. The only thing that can hurt him is if she's able to show a pattern of abuse by him onto her. Update: friend with daughter that he couldn't find any information about. So, my friend didn't know when his daughter was born, and after months of working overtime, he was able to afford a lawyer and took the ex to court. Wound up with a verbal agreement that he could see his daughter, and met her for the first time when she was about 6 months old. He wasn't happy with how little he got to see her, which was like 1 time a month, if that, and kept working overtime to pay for another court date. This time he was guaranteed 3 times a week visit for an hour and the whole of Sunday. She actually was allowing this, but still being a tramp. Well, he kept working, and he and his lawyer took her to court again for custody. Yesterday, after 6 hours in court, he won primary custody and he picked his daughter up today. She's now about 14 months old and will be cared for by an honest, hard-working man with a supportive family structure instead of a lying, abusive woman who can't even support herself. I am beyond happy for him and wanted to share this update with everyone because everyone loves a good update. I really hope you guys did enjoy that one. That's an amazing update. You don't always see them on Legal Advice, but I'm glad that we got that one. The most insane HOA. Let me set the scene for you a little before I get into the actual transgressions that I need to complain about. This is going to be a rant because I just need to tell some people about this. I live in a pretty nice middle-class neighborhood, basically right outside of a large city in the western United States. It's a quote-unquote newer neighborhood in the grand scheme of things, and more houses are only just being built, evidenced by an unfinished cul-de-sac down the street from me. There's a big old lake that sits in the middle of the whole thing where recreational activities occur, a small shop-and-go store, and a bar. Those are the only 3 things that I would guess separate us from just being a purely residential area. Now, we obviously have an HOA, or I would not be here to complain. Said HOA is mandatory to join, and I was happy to do so as there are no regular monthly fees, which is something I have never experienced before. I thought that was a little strange, but soon found out why they have set it up that way. The head of our HOA is an absolutely psycho person. If he dealt massive quantities of cocaine and had murdered multiple people, I would not be surprised in the slightest. If you simply have your trash out in a slightly askew manner, he will fine you $10. I am not joking. It is the most petty crap I have ever experienced. I have received multiple $10 fines for supposed rule violations. He's the type of person that drives a gigantic lifted truck because he's obviously compensating for something. He open carries firearms. He wears flip-flops literally everywhere he goes, even in the winter. He once tried to pull over an actual police officer and detain them for supposed speeding. Him and the rest of his HOA buddies, who are all friends due to having a kid around the same age, all hang out in the aforementioned bar literally every single night like they're some sort of biker club and not a discount neighborhood watch. One day, I had the audacity to question their fining methods at the bi-monthly neighborhood meeting, and I was met with accusations that I must be a Russian, because this is how we do things here. I am living surrounded by insane people. This is not normal behavior, correct? I am not going insane, right? Screw the HOA. One word, audit. Publicly call for an audit of those fines. If the amount of fines don't add up, this guy is pocketing the small little ones that he dishes out, which is illegal. Glad you're here to state the obvious, guy. Join the board. Get some friends to join the board too. This person has no more authority than anyone else, except what the ownership has given him. This is what is underrated. Karen it up. You're simply running on the basis that you have received X fines for trash askew, so you would like to add to this. First action, look up Mothers Against Drunk Drivers. Obviously, if the bar is the chosen location to meet, nothing against it, but you will personally call the police for speeding and public drunkenness if the people so much as think about driving from the bar. I mean, for an average citizen, it should be excusable, but for an HOA person? If you come into contact with the CCR that is violated, hold an official board meeting, where you detail why this is illegal and why this can land people in jail. Invite a lawyer, have questions like, so, if this gets put down without any change, it's an automatic lawsuit, right? Do you do pro bono work? Lobby for a noise ordinance. Publicly call it a micro-penis truck. That is what the kids call it today, right? Anyways, micropenis trucks are nice and all, but if they are over a certain amount of decibels, they should just receive fines for every day of operation. The idea is, most HOAs are bone dry and can easily be captured by yourself and a handful of friends. The HOA terrorist is living proof of that. So, dress up in your best Stepford wife outfit, put on those pearls, and go apply for the board. Because you are a concerned woman. Getting a Karen haircut is obligatory. I feel for you, but this is one of the greatest stories I've read in a long time. OP replies, I have a handful more that would probably take another 4 posts to lay out, and I've only been living in this community for a little over a year. I didn't even add that he loves to ride around on his orange ATV, which he has somehow made street legal. He decided to explain to me how he did that, unprompted, and now it sounds like an angry swarm of bees is flying around our street. He may have told you his ATV is street legal, but I'd suspect his unprompted explanation is so people won't think they can report him to LE. I'd call it in anyway, anonymously, or at least stress to LE that your anonymity is crucial. Worst thing that happens is they look him over and don't cite him. If you haven't already, I'd set up indoor security cams that cover your exterior. Posted by user Stalin Plus Love, titled, HOA unfairly fines my aunt for not shoveling her sidewalk. Note this was written 5 months ago. Since it's winter in the Northern Hemisphere and we're getting our fair share of snow, I have a story from my aunt. My aunt lives in a gated community in the Pacific Northwest. She's at a higher altitude, so she gets a bit of snow. She's a nice lady, very active, and always helps other people. Her HOA is a drinking club as she describes them. Have a whole bunch of rules, some totally ridiculous, heavily enforced, and always changing. Usually when rules are changed, they get posted on some online community bulletin board from the days of dial-up. Also, they like to fine and shame people. My aunt never attended meetings because she has no time for drinking and cigarettes. As per usual, with a lot of bylaws, you have to clear the sidewalk in front of your house of snow and ice. My aunt, being the woman she is, and living in a 55+ community, she always shovels her walk and salts it for ice. A couple years ago, there was a heavier than usual snowfall, maybe over 20 inches in the higher elevations, with some warm days, then freezing temperatures for a few days after. So first snowfall, she gets up early and shovels her sidewalk, and her walk, and sprinkles down some salt. It snows a few inches more, so in the later afternoon, she shovels the walk again and decides to salt again. She literally said she tossed a few handfuls of salt, and the neighbor across the street comes running out, demanding she stop salting, and it's a violation of HOA rules, whatever, crap. It seems that a no salt rule was added to their book of the great HOA rules. Reasoning is that salt crystals are unsightly and posted on the unusable online bulletin board from 1999, which at this point, the online bulletin board had been replaced by an under-maintenance error page for the past few months. So there was no way the drunken HOA rule changes could be relayed to the commoners. Well, my aunt apologizes, gets a warning for the first time she salted, and a second for the handful of salt she applied in the second salting, and then gets another warning for not properly clearing the sidewalk. Well, my aunt left maybe a strip about 2 to 3 inches for about 2 feet on the edge of her sidewalk, which wasn't properly cleared of snow. Not a big deal, she made an excellent effort, but the HOA neighbor didn't think so. Next violation would be a fine. Also, she had to clean up all the rock salt with a broom. My aunt ended up getting the new HOA rules in writing from the HOA neighbor, which she read over and realized they only stated salt in the sidewalk snow shoveling rule, but nothing that blue salt free ice melt. Also was stated is that the sidewalk should stay free of ice at all times. Also, she read a bit deeper to learn that street and sidewalk cleaning is covered by the HOA twice a year or is needed. Instead of risking HOA wrath of fines and some public shaming, because now it's near impossible to prevent the sidewalk from freezing up, she decides she will challenge the vodka-induced reasoning of the HOA, and will use the blue, non-salt ice melt to keep her sidewalk ice-free. The next day, after an overnight snowfall, she heads to the local hardware store to buy some blue, non-salt ice melt. Strikes up a conversation with the shop owner about her issue, who recommends these blue ice melting pellets, and throws in a bag of clay kitty litter on the house so she can stick it to them idiots. That afternoon, the temp rises just above freezing, and there is a heavy wet snowfall of a few inches, which hits the ground wet, melts, and refreezes when temperatures go below freezing at nighttime. So instead of risking having a skating rink for a sidewalk, she clears the wet snow and then dumps a bunch of these blue ice melting pellets and a whole bunch of kitty litter. Overnight, it freezes, and the next day she has the most ice-free sidewalk in all of the neighborhood, and it's covered in ice melt pellets. Well, it rains that day, and her use of kitty litter and blue ice melt pellets don't go unnoticed by the HOA neighbor. That afternoon, she is fined by the HOA officer in charge of fines for breaking rule, #vodka section stale cigarette smoke. She sees nothing wrong. The road is salted and sanded and looks like a mess, so her sidewalk doesn't look too bad or blue and grey speckled and ice-free. Then she gets a notice to clean up the salt, which she ignores because it's not salt she is using to de-ice her sidewalk, but blue salt-free ice melt pellets and clay kitty litter. Then that day it rained, then froze, and continued to rain, then snow, causing everything to be covered in ice and snow the next morning. It was a disaster. My aunt cleared the snow from her sidewalk and applied more blue pellets and kitty litter, which wasn't a task, because luckily she already had applied so much that there was already no ice on her sidewalk or snow. Everyone else in the neighborhood had to chip the underlayer of ice after they risked a horrific fall while clearing the top layer of snow. She then was fined again, while the neighbors had to actually walk in the messy street in some parts because sidewalks in some spots were unwalkable. Warnings and fines were given to other unsuspecting neighbors who couldn't attend the HOA booze meetings and had mistakenly used salt or had not chipped and cleared all the sidewalk ice in an acceptable amount of time. The next few days were blue skies and below freezing with ice everywhere. Sidewalks had been chipped, but iced up over time with a thin layer of slick ice called black ice. People were falling, and my aunt now had a couple rogue neighbors using all types of non-salt ice melt. One guy made a solution of brine and molasses, which he sprayed on and got great results. Others used sand, brine, non-salt ice melters, and even 15 gallons of wine, which turned to vinegar, was applied. The HOA's alcohol consumption probably increased, as the officer fell on a patch of black ice out front of his home, breaking his elbow while returning from delivering fines, warnings, and general nastiness. Eventually, the weather returned to above freezing levels and rain, which washed away all the various ice-melting substances. The rogue neighbors gathered at my aunt's house enjoying tea and snacks. Amongst them was the man who used brine and molasses, who happened to have a license to practice law and was retired with nothing else better to do than to ruin the drunk, useless HOA at the next meeting. He then invited himself to the next meeting with a file folder of all the fines and warnings with a statement of dispute for each one. Also brought his tablet to prove the online bulletin board wasn't working, which helped the case that the HOA wasn't providing proper means of communication to the residents, which meant the residents could sign a petition to fire the standing HOA members and appoint an intern HOA till the election. My aunt was appointed treasurer, found the previous regime spent HOA funds at a liquor store, the retired lawyer president, who then went after the previous HOA for funds spent on booze. And they all lived happily ever after. The end. Kyanite says, a good story and well told. +1. OP replies, I actually phoned my aunt and got her to tell me the story in great detail. She enjoys it and still holds the treasury position. She said the HOA only really organizes neighborhood improvement projects and neighborhood events. Most of the stupid rules are gone and they haven't fined anybody since they took over. She said the HOA Christmas party was a blast, and they now spray all the sidewalks with an environmentally friendly, anti-ice solution of calcium carbonate and molasses. That's awesome. I'm so happy to hear someone's HOA nightmare had a happy ending. I'm afraid mine is going to put a lien on my house right now because I can't find someone to repave my driveway, and it has a hole that I can't fill in because the drain for the 6 surrounding houses is in my driveway, so all of the water flows into it. So I can't just paint this stuff on like I usually do, and it's been raining just about every day. Plus, I don't think I'm supposed to do my driveway without getting permission from the Department of Water Management due to said drain, which may be why no one will do my driveway. I'm just really frustrated, and I have a chronic pain condition, so I can literally do about one thing a week. I need to find the disgruntled about the HOA lawyer in my neighborhood, lol. There must be one. There are like 15,000 houses in my HOA. Gypsy Ganurski says, salt should be banned because it's bad for the sidewalk and dangerous for dogs to walk on, not because it's unsightly. Salt-free ice melt should be encouraged no matter how bad it looks. Salt is salt, not particularly harmful to dogs. Now, it getting stuck to their paws and causing the melt to refreeze is a problem. Also not only a problem only for salt. Most salt-free ice melt, however, is extremely harmful to dogs. You need to make sure to get specifically pet-friendly ice melts. They do make something called doggy booties, starting at around $4. Google doggy booties and view the shopping tab. PetSmart carries them among other dealers. Your woofer will love them. And you'll love the dog's reaction when they first wear them. Back in the day, 50 plus years ago, we had a female boxer. Winter came, we bundled her up well, used old baby shoes for her feet. Older siblings swiped my jacket to keep her warm, walked her down the street and past a local gas station. The owner was on the phone and his jaw dropped as he turned to follow my sis and our boxer. Leo Hat says, also, some places in the Pacific Northwest ban the use of salt because of the runoff into the streams. I know that W. wasn't allowed to use salt until major snow events completely shut down the Seattle metro area for like 3 days. I can't remember the year, but it was the same year that Mayor Nichols ordered the city's snow removal department to clear the roads to his house before the rest of the city. Posted by user NerdLover2528, titled, "You want the HOA to enforce the rules?" I live in a small subdivision that has an HOA. You've all heard horror stories about HOAs, but this one is actually really relaxed in the compliance department. The HOA is still ran by the developer and the management is outsourced to a third-party company. So, no head of the HOA Karen that lives in the neighborhood constantly monitoring everything. We do, however, have a private Facebook neighborhood group. My neighbor is a complainer. He always complains about the ineffective HOA because people have installed sheds and above-ground pools. While all these things are discouraged, they are allowed with the ARC approval. Basically, email the management company a modification request with the specs and pictures, and they approve it. So all the stuff he is complaining about has been likely approved by the HOA management company. I don't think my neighbor is aware of this because he complains about it every few months like clockwork. So earlier this month, I noticed my neighbor and a few other houses in my neighborhood had put out political yard signs in their yards. According to the HOA covenants, this is prohibited and there is no approval process. It's just not allowed. So I emailed the guy at the management company that handles our HOA to let him know. He emailed everyone that day to remind them that yard signs are prohibited and gave everyone 7 days to remove them before they get a violation. My neighbor posted last week about receiving a violation in the mail. He was ticked. But hey, he wanted an effective HOA, right? Posted by user ChinaMex123, titled, "Secret Board Meetings and HOA Ignoring CCRs and Replacing Them with Fines." For 20 years, the old HOA board just let people park on the streets because there's not enough parking. But new board is making up rules and fines instead of following CCRs, and having board meetings in secret, and forcing a meeting of members when it's currently a misdemeanor to meet in groups due to COVID in WA state. I have already written a cease and desist and a demand for all the fees to be refunded to owners. They don't care. I'm not rich enough to hire an attorney. I need help ASAP. Whatever you know to help, I'm all ears. Yeah, no. This is attorney territory. This is the kind of stuff lawyers live for. I can guarantee that they would take this case. Maybe get a group of homeowners in the HOA together to help pay for a lawyer. I wonder if a lawyer would work on contingency, or a public attorney, since we have WA state laws that govern as well. Well, you could ask. I do have one other suggestion though. Document all the things. Emails, paperwork, phone calls, and text messages, all of these will help. Get a copy of the CCRs as well. If you have proof, they won't be able to do shit against you. Lawyers will only work for a percentage if they think they'll recover money. But if you sue the HOA with intent of getting money, you're literally just suing yourself, and they'll just raise assessments on you to fill that hole. Much better to just pay someone to send the cease and desist letters, citing where they are blatantly breaking the law and violating contract. HOAs operate under contract law more than anything else. Much, much better to start collecting evidence of their malfeasance to show your neighbors so you can gather the vote necessary to get rid of the HOA board. HOA meetings literally cannot legally be secret. They have to be open to the public, by which I mean the people paying dues, because I've been shouted at before by shills and day-holes about how HOA meetings totally aren't open to the general public. Duh, freak nuts. We aren't talking about the general public here. They have to keep records of meetings, they have to provide those records on request, they cannot just enforce rules that aren't in the docs, etc, etc, etc. Hard to vote if the meetings are secret and there is no ballots. HOAs are legally required to do that stuff, but that's not the same as they can't do that, they obviously are doing it. Carcamouth78 says, if I had to hazard a guess, I'd bet your HOA is breaking a number of laws. While some states allow working board members, it's relatively new. Not every state allows it, and your 20-plus-year-old is definitely too old to have it included. Look for a section that discusses meetings, notice, and quorum. If the board is ignoring what's written, absolutely everything they're doing is illegal. For example, I had to post a 30-day notice for board meetings. For an association meeting, I had to give 90 days notice by mail and post a 3x5 notice at the entrances. The CC&R bylaws can't be superseded by rules. Again, there might be language that explains how rules are added, or there might not. If it doesn't appear, you'll have to look into state law. Either way, adding anything requires notice, an association vote, and opportunity to contest. Your best bet is to get together with neighbors and chip in to hire a lawyer. You could try to pull off an emergency vote to replace the board, but you'll need to put in a lot of work, find volunteers equally willing, and you'll still probably wind up in court. Breakfast Beers says, boards are typically allowed to make additional rules and regulations, so long as they aren't in conflict with the CCRs. Also, board meetings are also typically held without notifying members. In fact, most CCRs explicitly state that members aren't even permitted at the board meetings unless explicitly invited. Nothing you've described here, except expecting a member meeting in violation of state orders due to COVID, is out of the ordinary. OP replies, so if their CCRs say you're supposed to warn with 48 hours, then tow a vehicle for a violation, they can just ignore that and put in rules to fine $100? Our CCRs say all meetings must be announced to homeowners, and even if a private board meeting is called to discuss liability issues, they have to still announce the meeting and have rules around that. No, they cannot just ignore written parts of the contract. Thank you. And OP says, I tried calling the Secretary of State. They referred me to Attorney General. Attorney General says they only take cases that affect WA state versus private cases. I called District Attorney and mentioned extortion as a company is obtaining money without legal merit and threatening injury via liens on homes, and they said to file a police report first. I think police will tell me it's just a civil matter. Laws are written so heavily in favor of HOAs, many private lawyers won't even consider cases from individuals. Update. Thank you everyone for your help. You gave me courage to do this. I got the meeting cancelled. I emailed every public office official and either got canned responses or misinformation on where to go next. Called Attorney General, sent reports with the help of a few friends to the Governor's complaint line on COVID meetings, emailed every major news outlet, found a way to slip in a Facebook post to the community, found some emails of the residents that participated in last year's vote, and emailed them directly. Threatened the sheriff coming as they hired a food truck to bring in even more people, filed a $10,000 small claims court case, sent them a document outlining all penalties for large gatherings, told them that they are discriminating against people with disabilities, who especially can't go to public gatherings. I have muscular dystrophy, and if I get COVID, I'm screwed. They sent out a Facebook post that blamed me, saying I'd reported them and they didn't want to fine. Didn't say anything about the health and well-being of the community at risk, so now they must restart their process. So much for paying a lawyer. Have egg on their face again, sent out mails to everyone again, figure out how to get people on Zoom, explain why they have a suit for $10,000, and give me the frickin' documents to review that I've been asking for more than 45 days, and they've been withholding. They had said I couldn't see them until after the vote. What? The law says they must be available for viewing at all times, reg business hours. They've refused. I'll now have more time to put flyers on cars or homes that these crazy new rules would affect most. They won't answer my questions on the secret board meetings though. I did ask for the minutes. Maybe we save it for court? Then I get an email saying they'd like to negotiate. Great. My small claims court will have a court-appointed mediator, no lawyers allowed. I'm going to eat her alive in there. Now, how does one calculate damages? Woohoo! You're courageous and tenacious, and you're an example of so many of us who feel like we can't fight bands of a-holes like these. Bravo. Thank you so much for the support. I'm learning so much from this experience, but I have to give the credit back to the Reddit community. I was truly motivated and encouraged by everyone's participation, and especially the funny comments, because laughing is the best medicine. You want the HOA to enforce the rules? I live in a small subdivision that has an HOA. You've all heard horror stories about HOAs, but this one is actually really relaxed in the compliance department. The HOA is still ran by the developer, and the management is outsourced to a third-party company. So no head of the HOA Karen that lives in the neighborhood consistently monitoring everything. We do, however, have a private Facebook neighborhood group. My neighbor is a complainer. He always complains about the ineffective HOA because people have installed sheds and above-ground pools. While these things are discouraged, they are allowed with the ARC approval. Basically, email the management company a modification request with the specs and pictures and they approve it. So all the stuff he is complaining about has more than likely been approved by the HOA management company. I don't think my neighbor is aware of this because he complains about it every few months like clockwork. So earlier this month, I noticed my neighbor and a few other houses in the neighborhood had put out political yard signs in their yards. According to the HOA covenants, this is prohibited and there is no approval process. It's just not allowed. So I emailed the guy at the management company that handles our HOA to let him know. He emailed everyone that day to remind them that yard signs are prohibited and gave everyone 7 days to remove them before they get a violation. My neighbor posted last week about receiving a violation in the mail. He was ticked. But hey, he wanted an effective HOA, right? If the HOA ever gets turned over to the residents, don't ever let that guy get any position of power, however minor. Frankly, I fear the day our HOA moves from developer control to resident control. As far as I can tell, they end up getting run by people who have the time and who have opinions. This is not the pool of people you want running your HOA. Ah yes, the Have Opinions Association. I'm familiar. Yeah, our former HOA president hid the fact that our building is over 10k in debt so that more people would move in. It also came to light that one of the, council members, I don't go to our HOA meetings because of the chaos, one of the people whose votes mattered, died. But the HOA president didn't say anything and just pretended that he just didn't show up to the meeting so she could pass a decision that she knew the dead guy would have voted against. When all this came to light, she had to step down, but I don't think she had much option. Also, when we moved in, she protested letting us have our geriatric golden retriever on the property because she thought he'd be too disruptive. But he literally just sleeps all day. In the 2+ years I've owned him, the most noise I've heard him make is the occasional dramatic sigh. Meanwhile, my downstairs neighbor has a tiny dog that yaps non-stop, bites other people and dogs, gets out all the time, and I can personally attest that me and my roommate, on separate occasions, have had to pick that dog up after it escaped and tried to go after my dog. Posted by user Rena Jackson, titled Fudging Karen. I have the biggest Karen living in my neighborhood. So, we bought our home 3 years ago. At the time of purchase, we signed a set of bylaws for the subdivision that were laid out in the 60s when the neighborhood was being built. These rules included things like you couldn't have a separate building such as a shed, pool house, carport, garage. Now, several, I wouldn't even go as far as to say the majority of homes, including mine and my grandparents, who moved in 77, have RV covers, carports, sheds or workshops, and the house across the street has a pool house. So needless to say, the original bylaws were never upheld. In October of 2018, we had our little girl at 26 weeks, and spent the next 4 months in NICU. In December, on one of the rare occasions I came home, a neighbor came by with some paperwork saying there was a house renting on VRBO and it needed to be taken care of. I needed to sign this paper and get it back to her by the 31st of December so she could get it filed. I ignored the issue. I don't care what someone else does with their property as long as it doesn't affect me, which this never did. The house was rarely rented out, and when it was always a really quiet, I never heard anything, saw trash thrown about, etc. Anyway, apparently she gathered enough signatures to amend the original bylaws to include a ban on renting VRBO. She then took the homeowner, who lived in a different state by the way, to court, won, and had it put in the judgment that they had to sell their freaking house. So at this same time, she came up with the idea of starting an HOA. That way, our neighborhood could stay safe and be able to take care of any problems that would arise. No elaboration. October 2019, she then began collecting signatures to add a new amendment to include forming an HOA. She and another lady in our neighborhood who was a notary collected and notarized signatures. Once she believed she had her 2/3 vote she thinks she needed, she filed the paperwork. She had been having neighborhood meetings. I know of 19 of 47 homeowners who were never notified of the meetings, until I found out about one and posted a sign at the end entrance/exit of the subdivision. Once we all showed up at this meeting, we were informed that the HOA had passed and we were all obligated to follow the rules and pay the dues that would be determined. I, along with the other 19 homeowners, made it very clear we were not part of any HOA and would not be participating or paying any dues. Shortly after this, I received an email saying that board members would be voted on via email and $25 yearly dues were due, and I could make my check payable to her name. Other homeowners received an email saying that there was a one-time initiation fee of $115 plus the $25 yearly due, and thanking them for their contribution for legal fees for taking the VRBO house to court. Like, how much money has this lady got out of people? All this to say, I checked her math multiple ways: votes per lot, votes per fraction of a lot, votes per number of owners, like every stupid way possible. The only way I can think I didn't do it was by value of the home to value of the entire subdivision. Anyway, she never had over a 60% vote in favor for starting a POA. They probably mean HOA. I've called her out on it, and she refuses to acknowledge it. She is a real estate agent, and there are a couple of houses in the neighborhood for sale. I looked at the listings and noticed that one, who signed for the HOA, has association fees of $25. The other home, who did not sign for the HOA, does not have association fees listed. She's also now, well, I'm sorry I don't know for sure who, someone has called the city on all of us heathens that won't sign the HOA. So the city has been writing warnings to almost everyone for something or another. Mine for a pile of brush left after cleaning out a flower bed, and my grass being over 6 inches. Neighbor for a stack of tile in her driveway, another for having a ladder and an inflatable boat on a dolly in their yard, another for leaves in the ditch, and so many other crazy offenses. Obviously, she's calling the city because she knows the HOA can't do anything, or at least she knows we know she can't do anything. My concern is she's taking advantage of the elderly in the neighborhood that feel like the HOA is making them safe. She asked my elderly neighbor if she needed any groceries, since she couldn't get out with all the COVID around. My neighbor said no, she was fine. Then the lady turned around and said, "Oh, okay, well, do you have your $25 for dues?" My neighbor's exact words were, "I gave it to her. I'm afraid of what she would do to me if I didn't." Not that she thought she was being physically threatened, but she literally thinks she could lose her home over not paying these bullies. Is there anything I can try to give or say to these elderly to make them not feel threatened by her or the other board members? I have plenty more details if you have questions. I know some states have laws about extorting the elderly. You might want to look into that. If you can, a lawyer will help you better find out if it applies here. Also, she's using the city inspectors to harass them. Anything with old people being taken for money, I call adult protection services. The coming around to ask questions can be a deterrent in itself. I thought that was for stuff like carers and family members stealing money or medical neglect. Do they also cover stuff like OP's situation? If they're illegally collecting money from older people that don't understand what's happening, I would call, because it sounds like a scam. I wonder if you can also leverage that against those horrible scam cold calls. My grandpa's wife keeps falling for those. She's got dementia, and forcing him to pay money to them. That Happens a Lot says, all states have laws governing how HOAs are supposed to work. Honestly, I'd ask to see the notary's logbook of all the signatures and the addresses to confirm with the homeowners that they did in fact vote for this. Some don't keep logbooks, but there are still records of who voted yes. If you think the notary was in on it, look up notary misconduct in your state for who you need to report it to. Also, I make my HOA checks out to Neighborhood HOA. It's highly suspect that she wanted checks made out to her. Ask for financial records immediately, and when, note I said when, she doesn't produce them, or she shows her paying herself, file a complaint against her with the real estate board. She really should know not to mix money, and basic accounting says you get a business license for a legal entity. I guess I would be worried if she's pocketing the money and faked the signatures, all of which are fraud. A police report starts a paper trail, even if no charges are possible due to her harassment. I agree with your second point heavily, and this indicates to me that she didn't set up the HOA correctly and legally. Having been through something very similar to this, I'm going to add that you need to publicly disclaim any indebtedness to this HOA of any kind. You cannot be compelled to join an HOA that is formed retroactively, and if there are no common areas, there is no HOA, full stop. You should immediately send out certified mail to each and every homeowner in your subdivision specifically denying the debt and any indebtedness thereof. You should also publicly state a demand for documents, including articles of incorporation, tax filings, state and local filings, all correspondence, and so on. And whatever you do, do not speak with anyone. You should communicate only in certified mail. You may also have personal cause against the realtor and can go after her license for this. I certainly would. It took a monumental effort on my and my wife's part to drive this devil out of our 40-home 2-street subdivision, but we did it. There is no HOA here, and there never will be. The fact that some smart-ass piece of crap realtor thought he could do this was what started all of it. I will tell you this. My wife believes it was something much larger than the work of this jackass, and I did not, and it goddamn near cost us our marriage over the fights we had. You need to immediately lawyer up, file suit against this realtor for what she has done, and start burying this tramp with paper, including demands for documents. I would also immediately demand to know who the legal counsel is. You can also go pull up all legal findings this fudging moron made. They may be defective. You can't just spin up an HOA without a hell of a lot of work, including federal filing. Bet she didn't do that. But as I said, if you have no common area, there is no HOA. What they are doing is extortion, and the fact that they are now trying to compel you to join them is illegal. They can't full fudging stop. This is what happens when some fricktard decides to be a big shot. Posted by user, hello friends. Titled, HOA levy fines even though not part of HOA. Location, Kissimmee, Florida. Situation. My parents had an existing fence on their property that was falling apart. They tore the old fence and built the new one without a building permit. A couple of months later, they receive a notice from the HOA stating that they are in violation of the governing document because they had fencing installed without filing a building permit with Osceola County, or notifying the Architectural Control Committee as per the deed restrictions requirements. My parents are not part of the HOA. The notice also includes the following statement. Additionally, our records indicate that you are not a member of the redacted Homeowners Association. We highly suggest that you complete the enclosed application and submit this with the annual dues of deducted. They were invited to attend an HOA meeting to contest these fines. However, they were unable to attend due to an emergency. Since they did not attend the meeting, the HOA levied a $1,500 fine and planned to file a property lien against their home. My parents tried to get more information, but the number provided does not return their calls. At the moment, I am trying to pull deed records from the county to determine if there are any deed restrictions. I plan to help the folks contact the HOA representatives if they do another meeting regarding the fine. Questions. Can the HOA impose fines if my parents are not part of the HOA, or is it dependent on what the deed restriction says? It just appears counterintuitive to not be part of an HOA, yet these have to still receive personal approval for a fence regardless of deed restrictions. Outcome: we are hoping to remove the fine. Thanks in advance for any help. Funk Doctor says, an HOA cannot fine someone if their lot isn't part of the association full stop. And that addendum you mentioned makes it seem pretty clear that they do not think you are part of it either. If your search shows that there are really no deed restrictions, then you don't have to have the fine rescinded since it's not valid. If your search does show something, contact a lawyer immediately as you will need pro help. The very fact they apparently issued a fine to a unit they know isn't a part of the association is pretty outrageous on its own. OP says, I was finally able to find the deed. However, it was only 1 page, and the document contained the following. This deed, not effective until redacted. This indenture, made the redacted day of redacted AD, redacted by redacted Secretary, Department of Housing and Urban Development of Washington, D.C., herein called the grantor, who post office address is redacted, to parent. Witnesseth that the grantor, for and in consideration of the sum of redacted, and other valuable considerations, receipt whereof is hereby acknowledged, hereby grants, bargains, sells, aliens, premises, releases, conveys, and confirms unto the grantee all that certain land situates in Osceola County, State of Florida, viz. Lot redacted. I'm sorry, I can't read this. I'm just going to put the screenshots of these on screen. You can read them all if you want. That's pretty epic. It is a very long deed. Heathen Chaser says, not a lawyer, but that looks to be just a part of the HUD purchase contract. I had a similar statement in my FHA purchase agreement for my home. If your parents kept all of their mortgage paperwork, and there was no mention of HOA within it, then they need to contact their real estate agent and or title insurance to determine if that house is indeed part of the HOA. The county deed office might be able to help as well. Left Penguin says, if the HOA is trying to put a lien against your parents' house, I suggest you find a real estate attorney. If you were part of the HOA but were not notified when purchasing the house, then you could try using your title insurance. I did not even think about title insurance. Thanks. I contacted my parents to call the title insurance. Hopefully it can shed some light, but in the meantime, I told the folks to assemble any sales documents for review. Back to the original post, OP puts, edit. I received clarifying information from the folks. HOA has yet to put a lien on the property, they only threatened. Update 1 is about the deed we just read out. Update 2. I found the record plat and saw no mention of the HOA. Nonetheless, I told my parents to call the title company for more details. I will sort through their sales documentation later tonight. Update 3. Unfortunately, I found the restrictions document/covenant titled Restrictions on Real Estate for Redacted Subdivision, and my parents' lot/record plat. I found the documents on the county recording website, and it says, no building shall be erected, placed, or altered on any lot until the construction plans and specifications and a plan showing the location of the structure have been approved by the Architectural Control Committee as to the quality of workmanship and materials, harmony of external design with existing structures, and as to location with respect to topography and finish grade elevation. I hope that helped some of you guys out on your HOA endeavors. Posted by user Cafe Now, titled Notified HOA of Intent to Build Fence. President called to inform us of gentleman's agreement. Location, Michigan. We moved into a new house earlier in the year and noticed homes don't have fences unless there is a pool built. During the home buying process, we requested the bylaws multiple times and never received them, and even had our friends who live in the neighborhood post on the HOA Facebook page asking about fences. The answer on the Facebook post was that the city restrictions on fences are more stringent than the HOA's. Once we moved in, I got access to the Facebook page and found the bylaws, and the only thing about fences talks about how tall they need to be and how they can only be in the backyard. No requirement to notify the HOA or anything. When I mailed in our ballot for new board of directors, I included a note stating our intent to build a fence and that I reviewed the bylaws and city requirements and I would make sure I follow the rules there. signed with my name and number, and the president called my husband upon receipt of the letter to tell him about the gentleman's agreement that people won't get fences unless they get a pool. There is nothing about this in the bylaws. I roll over them calling my husband instead of me. We do intend to get a pool in the next couple years, but a fence is our first priority to keep our young children and the dog in our property line. Both our neighbors do not have a problem with us getting a fence. I want to keep an open line of communication with the HOA for the sake of keeping a positive relationship. But is there any legal enforcement they have over us building a fence without having a pool first? Thanks. I'm still stuck at you not getting a copy of the CCRs and bylaws. When I bought my condo, those were in the disclosure documents I got when I signed the intent contract. I've been annoyed with this too. I know it's a very casual HOA. Technically, we've never received the bylaws. I just came across them on the Facebook page. But we never signed any bylaws or anything. Print them off in case they try to change it since it's just on Facebook. I'm not a lawyer. If there's nothing in the CC&Rs, bylaws, or house rules, you are free to do whatever you want. A gentleman's agreement is not legally enforceable. I'm not a lawyer either, but I've taken contracts. Some gentlemen's agreements are enforceable. It all depends on the context, but if there was no actual agreement, gentleman or otherwise, between OP and the HOA, then it's probably not enforceable. True, a verbal contract is legally enforceable. However, in the case of HOAs, when you close on a property, you are required to sign the bylaws, thereby agreeing to be bound by those terms. The HOA cannot add verbal terms to the agreement after the fact unless it follows its due process for amending the CC&Rs or bylaws. If the HOA wants to restrict building fences, it needs to follow its due process, and the president claiming a gentleman's agreement won't cut it in court. Posted by user CamCab04, titled, "Can they do this?" We bought an apartment 3 years ago. Recently, our HOA decided that they did not like doormats being outside of our apartment, the standard ones, because it's a fire hazard, ? The thing is, we live in Florida. It rains every day in the summer, and shoes get wet and muddy, especially when my husband is a botanist. I find it a little strange for a rule to be made like that, and so sudden. I think it was because the lady that cleans outside was annoyed by them more than anything. I understand it can be annoying, but can't they just give us a date and time, and we will bring them when cleaning is going to happen? This HOA has made pretty sudden rule changes, which no one seems to be allowed to vote on. My husband joined the HOA board after they suddenly said we couldn't have visitors after 7 p.m. any day of the week unless we notified the head lady in advance. I feel like I don't know what is actually allowed and what is not. I would have never moved here if they had those rules at the time, but they didn't until this past year. It does seem a bit litigious. I think getting your husband on the board is a good idea, as he can help steer the ship a bit. Look up your rules and regs. There are usually stipulations about how the rules and regs can be changed by an ownership vote or by a board vote with a certain amount of notice, etc. Unless they are breaking any rules, there isn't much you can do. Giving notice for visitors after 7 seems absolutely ridiculous. I would fight this tooth and nail. I doubt that they are allowed to do this. Yes, the visitors after 7 is what is really upsetting. We're in our late 20s, and having friends over during our last few years without kids is a huge hassle. What's crazier is we have 2 parking spots, but we only have 1 car when we have visitors over. They can park in our parking spot so we aren't taking anyone's space. We would usually tell our friend to carpool so they could park in the extra spot. With this change, they get towed after 7. We went on vacation and took my car, so my mum left her car in our spot. We didn't say anything because we figured it's our parking spot, and we aren't even using the second that we own as well, and we got towed. While the towing is petty and seemingly a waste of money and resources, I'm sure your complex simply pays a company to go around and point out cars to tow. They probably don't have any other guidance other than tow every car without a placard, or tow every non-registered car. If it's the former, you should share placards with guests, and if it's the latter, they just suck. Sounds like you need more clear R&Rs. No idea about your local laws, But when I lived in a condo in New York City, the New York City Fire Code expressly prohibited anything being kept in the corridors of a multi-family dwelling, including doormats, holiday decorations, umbrella stands, etc. So it could be a fire code issue, but more likely you have a Karen on the board. I lived in New York City as well when I was a kid. Apartments there are indoors, so I think that is why. I'm in Miami, everything is outdoors. I would get for the fire department to get through, but it's a really wide hallway and there is ample room. Oftentimes, logic has absolutely nothing to do with fire codes. It's a case of, this is the law, like it or lump it. Alright, that's where I think I'm going to end today's episode, guys. I hope you enjoyed this one. Tell me what you thought of it down below, and I hope you have a good day, night, sleep, whatever you're up to. Say hi to outro Markee. Alright guys, that's all for today's video. I hope you enjoyed this one today. Tell me what you thought of it down in the comments below. If you're not subscribed to the channel, I would love you to subscribe because I love your face and I love seeing you here every single day that you are here in this video. I don't know what else to say today, guys. I hope you enjoyed the content. I do have a second channel that's called Markee 2. Link should be up on the screen somewhere here if you don't have adblock installed. If you don't know where to find the channel, you can go to my main page. Just click on the Markee face and it should be on the right, somewhere there, or on channels if you're on phone. Hope you guys have a good one. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.